Hi everyone, this is Kelly, obviously, and I thought at this point, I feel like, everybody, certainly, even the people from the farthest reaches, I feel, everybody has received their decks. I'm not going to give anything away, like in terms of story or anything, so I think we'll be okay. But I thought I'd just some tips and tricks. I think none of this is surprising and none of this isn't like in the sort of basics here, but we do have a lot. Like while this is a relatively small piece, right? This is the bulk of the guidebook is, the journal, the story is half of this, right? And then of course there are the meanings and the definitions. But in terms of the main systems at play, there's relatively a small amount. Obviously, I had to make the decision that I cannot teach everything to do with cartomancy, aka not. I can't teach everything about playing card divination. Um, and symbol reading, like a Lenormand style readings, and tarot in one guidebook, right? I can't teach from cover to cover, but hopefully enough to like clue you in. But I think this is probably in some ways a little more accessible to somebody who at least has some experience in these things. And so and even if you have experience, you may not have experience in kind of putting them all together. So the premise of Nellie's deck, right, of my ultimate decks, right, and I put this in the thank you message to people. Like I set out to make my perfect deck. That does not mean it is the perfect deck. It is not the perfect deck for everybody, right? I truly believe that deck creators should be making the perfect expression of the deck that they're trying to make for themselves. And then if that resonates and works for other people, then that's fantastic. And so this really was made um to be the perfect reading deck for myself. And as such, some people will really resonate with it. Some people will just have some extra hurdles to get over if they are, don't have the same reading style or ability. Not, I don't mean ability as in I'm better, but ability as in I've been reading with these particular forms of divination for a really long time. And so a comfortability, I think that's a better way to put it. So I'm very comfortable with playing card divination. I'm extremely comfortable with Lenormand style reading. And then I'm very comfortable with tarot reading, which really in this deck shows up in the majors. So, but the other thing is that I have had this deck in a keywords only version for 3 years now, more than 3 years now, because we're in September. So, 3+ years that I've been using it and reading it as a mashup. So I've just had a lot of time reading this deck this way. So that gives me a heads up. So I just thought that I would just try to do maybe a succinct. I know at this point people are going to laugh because I don't really do succinct anything, but I'm going to try to do sort of a succinct kind of touch into Nellie's deck. Now, if you know me at all, you know I'm a big fan of like one sheet wonders, right? So all of my classes, I say all and I think all, Geomancy has a one sheet wonder class. This is playing cards, but also has a little mystic test book. A couple of my other decks, my OMs and runes are on a one sheet wonder page. Like I'm a big fan of, can you succinctly put the key information roughly onto a single page? Then if the answer is yes, then do it. So, when if you've purchased Nellie's deck and you've missed this, there is a Dropbox link that you would have gotten that has sort of essential Nellie things. And two of those pages are these. One is the sheet that I use to create Nellie's deck. Like this is the sheet that I started with. Obviously, this stuff here wasn't filled in, but I started with this framework. Um, and started to build from there. So that is there with just sort of key meanings in the way that I see it. And all of this video is just presupposing, right, that you just want to see how I approach it. Obviously, you can take these cards and do whatever you want to do with them. They're yours now to input whatever kind of system that you want to input on them. So I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying this is how I approached it. This is how I read with it. And here's some tips and tricks that might be helpful if you're trying to really dive into Nellie's deck. So you have this sheet, which I think again is great. You at least have a basic understanding of how I sort of reconciled all the things. And then on the other side are again all of the bases. This is based off of my way of reading playing card divination, and it has everything that you need to know. And these charts are also in the book, but this is in a sheet that you can just kind of print out and keep with you. So I highly recommend that. Again, I do it for a reason. I use them all the time. I love them. So that's one. The other thing is that one of the important things I think in the guidebook are these two pages at the very beginning, right? You have obviously Nellie's message, my message, but then this is written, anything that's in this um, what would you call that paper? Blanking. Words are hard. When anything that is on this parchment is seen through to be through the eyes of Nellie, right? That Nellie is writing it. It's as if it was taken from Nellie. So this establishes the premise, right, that Nellie, aka me, started from in order to create the deck. And I think that this is again, these two pages are really important just for understanding even kind of order of operations of how you would read it, right? So she says, firstly, that the numbers are, as laid out below, are foremost. So the numbers are important and how you read those numbers. And as you'll see, there are two keywords for each number: aces, beginnings and endings; twos, cooperation or conflict; threes, expansion or loss; four, foundation or instability, right? And so on and so forth through the number. So there are two sides to each number expression, and how we'll get into, you know, a brief note of how to decide which one that is. So first order of operations is the numbers, right? The second, that the suits of the playing cards, as I've been taught them, be added to the number to make a meaning. And then we have listed here the suits, both tarot and playing cards and tarot. But playing cards are the key, right? This started the very first order of operations in terms of decks, types of decks, are cartomancy. So these suits plus this number, there is our base. So when we look at an ace, right, and that is a beginning, we'll just start from the base of it being a beginning, and we're doing the, you know, Ace of Swords, right? This is the beginnings or the potential of a mental shift in some way, right? We're just taking the number and we're plugging it into the suit, and we are getting a read. That's how I read tarot. That's how I read playing cards. Pretty basic, right? So that's number two. Number three is the symbols, right? The Lenormand symbols, Lenormand plus, the expanded Lenormand symbols on the cards. Thirdly, that the symbols, both traditional ones and the ones I've added, make sense to both the number and the suit. And lastly, that the variations of the suits of tarot be accessible. So I just want to make sure that the symbols didn't get in the way of the tarot minor, but the tarot minor really is not of great importance in this deck, right? Can you use it? Yes. That went all through my friend Patrick, always double checked and went through. He reads really tarot. He doesn't read Lenormand, doesn't read playing cards, he reads tarot. And so he was able, just my checkpoint in, like, okay, will this symbol at least give you another way into the tarot minor? Not Rider-Waite Smith, but the tarot minor, and not get in the way and maybe give you another way to look at it. Check, you know, that was a check there. But for me in this deck, the tarot, because tarot is a playing card deck, right? It's a playing card deck in which the trumps or the triumphs or the majors have been added to that. So the real tarot presence in a playing card deck are the majors, right? So where tarot really comes in strong in Nellie's deck is the majors. And so obviously those are there and they're their own separate things. The other thing that this page gives us insight into is actually the order of the suits, which I find to be is a shift for me. This has been a gradual shift. So for example, if I was doing an elemental reading, I used to always go from sort of Western elements, where you have fire and then you have air and then you have water and then you have earth. You see this in geomancy and other things. So I would always lay, so if I was doing a square and these were positions, this would be the position of fire, air, water, and earth. And this is how I would do an elemental reading. Since really the last 3 years of working with Nellie's deck and really trying to come, you know, whenever you go to teach something or create a deck, what interests me the most is just taking that opportunity to really stop and think about how you see things. And it allows you in that time after your experience getting to that point, where do you land? And I really have kind of shifted to, so I guess I could use their movement from hearts or cups to clubs or wands, from spades or swords to diamonds or pentacles. So that would be the order I would lay them in, because for me, the suit of hearts or the suit of cups is a suit of water, and it is all about our emotional landscape that's below the surface, but deeper than that is our inner power base. And clubs, which is how we interact with the world, and fire, which is manifesting out into the world, right? So we have our inner power that is manifested outward into the world. It is our emotional landscape and the way that that interacts with the world outside of out of us, with the moving from hearts to clubs, or just water to fire, moving from air or spades or swords, right? This is how we deal with challenges, how we mentally plan and come up with solutions, gain wisdom, gain information so that we can cope with challenges out in the world. We put those plans, we put those ideas, we put those wisdoms and things that we've gained, and we put those out in the world to be able to actually manifest, right? So if we have a plan, if it just stays in our head, it's just a plan. But if we implement it out in our physical world, that's when it actually takes form outside of ourselves, just as fire is what takes form outside of ourselves, fueled by our inner power base, if that makes sense. So that's why the order of, if you look at the guidebook, right, you go from each of the numbers, so ace of hearts to clubs to spades to diamonds. And so it's set in that order because of this understanding, which it says here, the order of the suit: start within with the hearts, cups, moves without to our interactions with the clubs and wands, to the challenges we face in those interactions within and without, with the spades and swords, and ends with our successes and resources with the diamonds and the coins. The majors and the keys stand outside as the greater story. So really, if you think about astrology, right, this is all of the energy that's going on as below. inside of us and manifesting outward as below. The major arcana is think of this as sort of the constellations and the signs that are moving, the story that's eternally turning and moving as above. It's the bigger picture, it's the bigger story, right? So this is how we can see the structure of the suits, the four minors and the majors, the structure of the suit and the order that they're in for that particular reason. So we can really see what's kind of happening on inner emotions and power, head knowledge, figuring challenge accepted, challenge trying to sort out and figure out the challenges, and then how those are expressed outward with the clubs and the diamonds. I see we've got like a little lovely light pattern wanting to, there we go, sorry. And then this bigger story that's moving without. So that's sort of, so again, that sort of key summation of, okay, the core that we need to understand is that this is the numbers that that the cards are based off of. The symbols are set in a place that makes sense to me, to the numbers that they are in, the suits that they are on. We have the suits, the order of the suits, how the suits work and interact with each other. So that's these two pages. Kind of lines out that structure of how that works. And then again, you have this page that just lets you say, okay, if I take a 4, which is about foundation, and I am using how the cups, the suit of cups or hearts, right? I'm really looking at this as security in our connections or in our inner power base. And that is associated with the house. So this is just a touch in as to how, why, what symbol I have there, and maybe a little bit as to why I have that symbol there, and a way to access it a little bit through the tarot if you're just coming straight from tarot. So your basic keywords. Whereas the other side is just giving you our basic numbers, our basic suits are at the along the side, and our influences, we'll talk about influences later, that's kind of next step, and our combinations, that's a whole nother ball game, right? But these two things here give you your basic information that you need to plug and play together. If 3 is a number of expansion and spades are challenges, then we can say a 3 of spades is going to talk about growing, can be talking about growing challenges. Now, it could be something different. It could be a loss, a reduction of challenges, again, depending on those influences, which we'll talk about later. But you've got your basics here. So this is those 2 pages, and this little pages that are in the Dropbox. This is a really a key, really all you need, I would say, to really lean into this. So I know that was a lot of an intro. Okay, so that's kind of the base. I do think just kind of getting your headspace in the understanding of sort of order of operations for Nellie's, I think that's a great place to start. But then you're like, okay, well, when I'm in a reading, right? So I've laid 3 cards on the table. Again, we'll talk about the 6 card spread, because I think that's the card to spread to really get comfortable in with Nellie's deck. But let's say we're laying our 3 cards down and we're saying to yourself, okay, I've got a 7 of diamonds here. I've got the moon card of Lenormand here. I've got the pentacles here, right? How, when I go to interpret that card, how do I interpret that card without like ending up with a jumble, right? So remember the order of operations. The first thing we're really looking at is that this is a 7. So we're saying to ourselves, okay, well, 7s, or you're either saying to yourself, if you have your own numbers, again, do you, I'm just telling you how I interpret these things, right? But if you look at your 7s, 7s are about foundations that can either be lead to a growth or blockage. So 4 plus 3, 4 is finding your foundation, and then new growth will start to come from there. Or if it's reverse, you're going to trip over that block that's in the middle of the road with the sevens, right? So we know that we're talking about kind of finding stability and then growth ensuing from there. Then we can take a look at our suits. Remember, this was built around playing cards. And so we're looking at our diamonds, and our diamonds are about our successes or our resources. I do not look at resources as just to do with money, but we have three major resources. How much time? We have so much time, so much energy, so much money. And so those resources that we have to utilize. But in terms of playing cards, it's really about our successes and how we can, like in the physical world, see those things start to those successes. So we right off the bat know, okay, if we can stabilize some things, we're going to start to see new growth towards success, new growth in our resources, depending on our reading focus. That could be, we might focus more on our time and energy. If it's a work reading, it could be all three of those things, where if we can successfully, find a foundation of how to use our time, energy, and money, we're going to start to see that grow, right? So we can get our understanding. We've looked at the number, we've looked at the suit. Now we can look at the symbol. The symbol of the moon in Lenormand is about an upward motion, upward growth, right? It's a cycle of waxing energy. And so we can say, okay, so now we have this potential, right? We haven't gotten the full picture yet, but at a basis, in its upright form, we have this understanding of new growth in our resources that's going to come. But again, with that understanding, we've got to have a good foundation there. Okay, so we say, all right, we get what that is. So it's a combination of those things. And we say, okay, well, here we've got the 5 of clubs. Well, we've got the 5, which is a shake-up number. This is, and doesn't mean it's a bad number. Don't think 5 negative. It's either active energy or disruptive energy, right? And it is in the suit of clubs, which is the way that we interact with the world. Fire, wands work beautifully for this, right? Pentacles are about our resources. Fire is about the way our power outward manifests and interacts with the world. So we don't have to get too worried about these. Like, just pay attention mostly to our 5, our number, and we've got clubs, interactions in some way. How does our knowledge, how does our understanding and or the secrets in the book in Lenormand, depending on if it's in its upright or not, how is that shaking things up in the world? We might have understandings that are allowing us to shake things up in a positive way. Again, so far we don't know if this is positive or negative. We're going to come back to that in a second, but we can see 5, shake up number, clubs, shake up in the way that we're somehow interacting with the world, people, situations. That's all going to depend on your question. And then we have our last card. We have a 6 that's coming in and harmonizing. 6 creates a path forward. So we've got a harmonization of challenges. We've maybe figured out a path and a plan forward. Again, if it's in its upright, forward. If it's in, this is actually birds, can be a lot of communication and talk and working together. But in its reverse, a whole lot of birds can be really disruptive and anxiety inducing, right? So depending on whether this is upright or not. But we're really just saying, what is our number? What is the suit that it's attached to? And we can then see the symbol sort of highlights that or allows us to access that in a different way. So figuring out how to read the suits, if we follow the number plus the suit, the symbol then just should come in and support our understanding of that. Becomes pretty simple, right? We're not really fighting against which one. They all kind of work together. But I will say that a lot of times, there's something that I call with this kind of soft gaze, right? If we have sort of a soft gaze, sometimes the symbols just really pop. And I'm just straight up reading the symbols. And that works fine because those work in conjunction for me with the number plus the suit. So it's almost like a little bit of a shortcut. But you're kind of paying attention to all of them. But I think sometimes in a reading, it just pops, you know, the symbols just really pop, and I find myself just straight up reading the symbols, and that's fine because it doesn't really war against the card meaning at all. So it works really well in that way. And just as a reminder for those of you that are Lenormand readers, the Lenormand symbols are not placed on the traditional Lenormand cards. Those were a German playing card deck, and so I've placed them on the Western style playing card, divination card that most makes sense to me. So just in case, I just want to caveat that there. So pretty basic, right, to of how to touch into the meanings, except for the big key here is that we need to know, are we reading this in its upright or its reverse, as the way people would say it? Is it in its light or is it in its shadow form? However you want to state that. How can we go about then knowing what this is? Well, there's two ways that you can do this. So you could choose to use reversals, right? So I just kind of, you know, flip your deck around in chunks, riffle. I usually do that 2 or 3 times, just kind of do a flip flop here in the reading a couple times, and just shuffle up, right? Shuffle, 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 do your business, talk about your question, however you choose to shuffle, however you choose to split, shuffle, split, do your reversals, set your cards in order and down, and now it's pretty obvious. So one of the nice things about Nellie's, obviously I love the deck, so I'm gonna be happy with it, but one of the things that is nice about the symbols being on the minors is that it's pretty obvious, right? When something is upside down. Unlike a playing card, it's not always obvious. And so it's pretty obvious that we are looking at this card in reverse. So now the nines, which is about dynamic change anyways, it's a little bit more difficult, and we're looking more at challenges than solutions here. This is going to be very difficult if you think about the nines as being really high dynamic energy, that sometimes we can really utilize that to get things done, but it can be very overwhelming. This would be the overwhelming aspect of that. Same thing if we think about the Queen of Diamonds, right? The Queen of Diamonds, queens are about trying to nurture the energy of their suit to grow, right? And so if that's in reverse, then that nurturing, right, isn't really there, and we're kind of undermining the energy of our resources in some way. But thankfully for this 3 card reading, we understand, and I guess I should have been moved in here a little bit. We understand that the sun, if we can master this, right? If we can come to some sort of a mastery of self first, which is then going to go outward into the world, we're really on a bigger trajectory, not just to fix these in the short term, but that we're really doing some work on mastering ourselves to be able to turn this energy around. Again, there's no question on the table. I'm just showing here where you can utilize reversals to, of course, to be able to see, okay, what aspect am I looking at? So that's definitely something that you can do. I would argue, because of course I will, I will argue another way to do this, because what you lose on this, instead of using influences, which I'm going to show you next, what you lose is suit interaction. So for example, let's take a spade and a heart, right? So if I look at the spade, right, and I say to myself, okay, it's the 6 upright or it's the 6 reversed, all I'm doing is taking that 6 of spades and just seeing one-sided, it's either reversed or it's not. But when we use different suits to talk to each other and interact with each other, when I see that the heart is influencing this. Number one, it's going to be lifting it up because the heart does. We're going to talk about that in a second. But we understand now that we're going to read this 6 in its upright, but we're going to understand why. Just as, for example, if we were to have another spade on top of it, Sorry, as I don't prepare with things. If I have the 10 of spades on top of a spade, I'm going to read this in its challenging aspect, and I'm going to know why, because we've got this heavy 10 of spades on top of it. So I'm also going to know why this is in its reverse. So same thing if we think about the heart as the main card. Okay, well, the 10 of hearts, that's a great card, right? We've got the successful culmination of the suit of hearts. We have great commitment, all that good stuff, right? Well, if we just read it in its reverse, we just know, okay, well, nope, there's a failure here, something's gone wrong. But we just know that vaguely something has gone wrong. Whereas if we have the 10 of spades or any spades on top of it, right? We not only know that it's not worked out as a success at the moment. This is not successful energy. We're kind of reading this in its reverse form. We also now start to know why, right? There are challenges, and we can use the 6 and we can just go into the understanding of why is there a problem here. It gives us extra information about how the energy of the situation is interacting. And this is the key. If you know me at all, you know that I personally think that the best way to see the energy, when we do reading, we're looking at a forecast of the energy of a situation. If we cast runes or charms on a table, in my opinion, it's the best way to see, oh, energy is clumping, or these two cards are pointing at, symbols are pointing at each other, or these are moving up here. I can literally see the way that energy is moving, interacting with each other, right? Because energy doesn't just stay in its own lanes, it mixes together and interacts. And utilizing casting, in my opinion, is the best way. But we love cartomancy. In my opinion, again, take it and leave it. It doesn't bother me how you choose to read, but in my opinion, nice, neat cards on a table aren't always the best way to read. If I just say, okay, it's 10 in, okay, yeah, it's 10 in reverse, but why is it 10 in reverse? Whereas if I have, something like this on the table, right? I can start to see a picture. This is influencing this and telling me how to read that. This spade is also impacting it. And so I can start to see the way that energy between the suits is interacting with with itself. You wouldn't use reversals in this case, with influences, but I can start to see how an energy of the situation is interacting with each other. And it really, in my opinion, makes it much more dynamic, right? So what, in a nutshell, okay, I want to make sure I'm not mixing my decks up. Okay, this one has been shuffled for reverses, so let me just slide it back into the bag here. So what I mean by influences, right, is that instead we shuffle our cards up as per normal. Shuffle, shuffle, shuffle. Do you, however you want to shuffle. Shuffle your cards, split however you want to shuffle your cards, right? And now I have the whole deck upside down. There we go. I like to lay, this card is influencing this card. This card is influencing this card. This card is influencing this card. These are our 3 main cards, right? So I can read the spades, understand that there are challenges afoot. Why are there challenges afoot? Because we've got some major energy. We've got a key card that is coming in and influencing and making this much heavier energy. And it's not just any major card, but it is also the monster card. So there is some abdication of power, perhaps a need to pull back power that is creating a very challenging situation. However, it's also being influenced by another major. Now we say, okay, this is really intense energy here, and it's about much. If this was a work reading or a relationship, we know there's deeper things going on because the major arcana is going on. But we see there's an opportunity for this to shift and this to change if we're willing to ask for help. But again, this isn't a reading. But we're letting the understanding, and again, this is right in the first 2 pages of Nellie's deck, where we talk about Key also, to my understanding of cartomancy, is the understanding of influences. 2 follows 1, 3 follows 2, and understanding where a card comes from and is going allows us to understand its place on the table. What is above tells us how to interpret what is below. What is to the right tells us how to further interpret what is to the left. These are the keys of interpretation as I have come to know them, in Nellie's in Nellie's voice, read from Nellie's perspective, or Nellie's voice, right? So what is above tells us how to interpret it, and what is to the right also tells us how to interpret it. You have on your handy dandy sheet, which is also in the guidebook, which is also in the guidebook on page 176, right? So when a key is over the top, you just use this as like an old style multiplication table. When a key is over a spade, we have an understanding of challenges role in your the challenges role in your greater path. There's a bigger thing afoot, and we're going to use which card it is to understand there's greater things afoot here to these challenges. That's an easy one to say. But let's say we have, like we talked about before, that spade, right? That's over a heart. We know that there's hurt and painful and difficult feelings. Or if it's a heart over a spade, we're talking about healing. We've got some good energy putting that challenge into something we're successfully navigating. So you've got a chart there on influences. And this is just basic playing card divination, or for me, basic playing card divination understandings that the suits interacting help us to know how to interpret the cards. And you can take this influences, right, and you can utilize that in your own tarot spreads. So let's say you're like, look, Kelly, I am not a playing card reader, nor do I want to be a playing card reader. I don't know that a person who bought Nellie's deck is necessarily going to feel that way, but you know, if you are, then let's say that's the case. Like, you don't want to dive deep into that. You don't necessarily want to stack the card. I want to use my own spreads, right? This is easy. Let's say you're going to do a within without, right? You shuffle up your cards, split how you're going to split. This card influences your main card. There's your within. Your main card is the 6 of clubs. We have this harmonization, and we know that this harmonization is because we have club over club, and we have the king of clubs that's influencing it. So we've got a really strong interaction with the world that is moving things forward in a positive direction, right? And then we say, okay, without, though, this is influencing this. So now we have, okay, we're going to put this, I probably got all of my things all whopper jawed now. I'll have to go back through it. So now we have the 5 of diamonds, which is active energy in our resources. But how do we read this? Well, we've got the 7 of spades here. So we've got challenges. So this might be more disruption. Now we're going to read this as outwardly, we have this disruption in our resources in some way. And so we need to be aware of that. We may have to, with that 7, find our foundation again, redo the budget. What can we tighten up our belts to be able to manifest so that we can deal with that without? And then let's say you have your advice, within without advice. This card again is influencing this card. So the advice is to have confidence, right? 4 is about stability. So stabilize the challenges. This is still acknowledging that there's challenges because the spades are influencing that, but stabilize that. Come up with a plan. Use your wisdom, use your knowledge, use your information to come up with a plan and move forward confidently. So now, with that taking up really any more space than, these are bridge size cards. So really almost taking up just the space of a poker size card, you have your influences built in. So even if you were to do a bigger spread, and I'll zoom out a little bit. Let's say you wanted to do it, well, it's not really bigger, but say you wanted to do an elemental spread, right? You can simply, again, this influences the main card. So that's the main card that you're reading. Of course, we're going to get the same card, but this is in the position of water, which is our inner power base, is manifesting itself outward here. And again, we're using those cards to influence. right? Each other, and we're just laying down 2 cards for each. We're just using this to help us to know how to interpret that card below. You can do this with a really big reading. Again, these are small cards, right? These are bridge size cards. So if we were doing my general reading, let's just try to get some fresh cards here, right? The first card is the influence to the main card. Right, so we're going to have that there. This is the way I do my, sorry, all of my cards are Whopper Jot. I'm going to have to pause and put them all upright again. So my basic general tarot reading is past, present, and future. And then we have our fire, our air. Of course, I've switched this around a little bit, but I won't do it to you all who have been using it for a while, so I'll leave it there. Fire, air, water, and earth. And then I might do this, right? And a don't do this, right? And so I can go through here and say the main card is the Lover. So in terms of fire and what we're going to manifest, I need to be making good choices. And in order to make those good choices, double up, right? Powerful. We've got 2 keys here, but we have the Judgment card here that's influencing the Lovers. Stop, assess, figure things out, release, and then make a solid decision taking you forward, right? So we're using, there's 2 diamonds here. So we know we're reading this as upright. It's mastery of the diamonds. 2 keys. I don't know why we got everything loading up pretty good with doubling up our suits, right? But we understand how to interpret those cards, and it doesn't really take up much more room. So this is a great way to play into those influences, and it really doesn't take up much space. And I much prefer this than reversals because, again, it allows you to keep those suit interactions at play. So in a nutshell, we use influences. I'm going to have to stop the video and fix these because it's going to drive me bonkers. So that we know how to interpret the main card, because we know, right, that each of the numbers have different ways that they can manifest in light or shadow, upright or reverse. But if we just do reverse, then all we know is that there is some kind of a difficulty. There is a loss in the realm of our power. There is a loss in our emotional landscape and strength, but we don't know why. We don't know what's causing that in some way. Whereas if, again, we have a, 4 of spades over, we still read this as a loss in our personal power, a loss in our emotional landscape, but now we understand it's because there are some big challenges that you need to work out, that you need to be able to face before you can get that growing energy again. So it gives us a why that straight up reversals don't give us. And it's one of the powers of playing card divination, not to plug the power of playing card divination, but it's one of the powers of playing card divination. Is that it doesn't just kind of say, yeah, this is what's happening. It gives us a hint as to why that is happening, which allows us to interpret the situation, the energy of the situation, in my opinion, a little bit more clearly. So I love that. So there we go. I wanted to just touch into, again, this isn't a full class on playing card divination and those kind of techniques that are used. I have those classes. There is a class, on Nellie's deck and on playing card divination, but I wanted to at least have, some just like a succinct video to kind of give you some tips and tricks as to why, like, how does Nellie's deck work, and why, how can we utilize those things to our advantage in doing readings. Okay, another tip, obviously if you're just checking for your reversals, if you've kind of got things mucked up like I have, just, use your indices in the upper corner. You should be seeing the playing card symbol. in the corner, not the tarot symbol. Obviously, other than the keys, that's you're going to have to look a little closer. But if you see a cup, you know that that's in its reverse. But obviously, because it is also has the symbols on it, it's pretty easy to whip through it and make sure, as per normal, that the the title of the cards is on the bottom, and flip those around. Because, sometimes you're in a rush and you just shuffle weird and you end up with your cards in reverse when you didn't mean to. Again, if you're in a reading and that happens, like, just flip it right side up. It's you reversing it didn't, energy, in my opinion, again, do you? In my opinion, you're reversing it didn't, mystically change it unless that was your intention. The energy of the situation, it's just you've shuffled funny. And so just flip it around, put it upright, and keep going. Okay, so the other sort of tips and tricks that I wanted to mention is I have played a lot with, obviously I use this in playing card divination, and I now just leave the majors in. Again, tarot deck is an expanded playing card deck, so nothing really changes by leaving the majors in. It just expands the energy. Now we're knowing that there are bigger things afoot. It's a kind of a pause button. Again, I'm not going to go into a full thing on that, but I just leave them all in for everything pretty much, and that includes grand tableaus. Now, in the guidebook, you do have, and also in the handout in the Dropbox, you do have the full tableau, if you want to lay the whole minor 56 cards out. And so that's great to do. I don't always have the space to do that. But I do, I do so many grand tableaus that I'm really comfortable with the houses. So I just wanted to give a tip to our Lenormand readers out there. Now, two things. You could take the majors out and do this. Definitely go for it. Take your majors out. I definitely do that. But you can also leave them in. And so just for the purposes of this, I'm just leaving them in. You'd shuffle your cards up. And again, if you're a Lenormand reader, right, you're going to now lay out your tableau. So you're going to lay out, I do them by 9. So I do a 9x4. Again, you do you. This is how I do, is a 9x4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And then you go through and you lay the rest of your cards down. Now, here's the key. In Lenormand, and again, I'm not teaching a whole thing about Lenormand here, how to read Lenormand, but in a Lenormand Grand Tableau, the understanding is that we have the power of symbol-based reading, is that we have all these wonderful key symbols that we can find that symbol and see what card is touching it, what card is around it, and we can get amazing information that way, right? It's an amazing style of reading. Obviously, it's forefront and center in my deck. Well, I put so for example, all of my charm sets, my charm casting sets, have a core of Lenormand, because those 36 symbols are really succinct in being able to look at all the different things that I need to look at. And so what you can do, instead of doing a full 56 card spread, you can go ahead and lay your 36. And the only difference is that instead of going and finding the card, let's say the anchor card is in, well, it's present here, but let's say the anchor card wasn't present here. You would just go in a normal grand tableau, you'd find the anchor and read the cards around it. Because we aren't guaranteed, because we haven't laid all the cards on the table, because we're not guaranteed that that anchor is going to show up, the first order of operations becomes the houses. So you can find the house charts anywhere. If you have any kind of Lenormand book or Lenormand experience, you can go online and find it. if you have my handy dandy for love of divination, you can, there's a chart that has it there. So you can go and say, okay, well, the anchor, this is the house of the anchor. So this would be the house of work. So now I look what card is in the house, and that is cool to see the alchemist. Like there's some mixing going on and a need to really mix things up in a certain way. Again, we're not reading this, but so we would do everything, we do the same way of reading grand tableau, but we focus on the house. This is the house of the anchor. What card is in it is going to be telling us something. What is in the upper left hand corner is going to tell us. We're going to read our line. We're going to read on what's either side of that. And then we're going to say, okay, well, I need to check in with my relationship. It's a long-term relationship. I'm going to go to the house of the ring. I see the dogs in here. We've got trust and loyalty here, but I do need to spark a match here. I do need to light some fire under it because there are some big changes of afoot that we want to end up manifesting for in a balanced way. Again, I'm not, there's not a reading on the table. I'm just saying we would then go and read all of the cards around that, right? So, and then we say, okay, well, that's great, but I need to take a look and figure out what is going on with my health and well-being. So I'm going to go to the tree card and see, okay, I've got to find my compass. I need to master some things. It's going to take some work because I've fallen into some negative patterns here, and I'm going to go ahead and read. So again, you could use your whole deck and or just take out your 56 symbol cards, so the minors, and just lay down your 36 cards that you're used to using those, and just start from the houses to find your significator and read what's in those houses and what's around that house card, just as you would per usual. So just a little tip and trick. If you're like me and maybe don't have a lot of space to do a full 56 tableau, I am working on a mini version, but that's not here and doesn't mean everybody's going to have it, and you don't need it, right? You can just lay the 36 cards to hit this, kind of like using the master method, not the Kipper master method, but more of the playing card master method. And we're just using the houses as our foundation and then just reading as we normally would for Lenormand. This works really great, and I would challenge you to even leave the majors in because it's a really cool way to just utilize all of the symbols, both the as above and the so below, to again get a fully fleshed out message there. So I just wanted to point that out, that you could do it that way. A little throw that little tip, something that's I've been enjoying and that works for me. For those of you who do love to work with Lenormand and grand tableaus and can be able to utilize that without either taking cards in and out or not having like the space to do like a huge giant tableau past the 36 cards. So there we go. That's another tip. So I hope that this just, helps, or just is another way for those people who are kind of working on and starting to work with their decks and kind of come to a connection and a way of approaching the cards, that kind of just understanding, I guess, what I am calling the order of operations, I think really helps, right? What is the number? What is the suit? We add those together. The symbol should enhance or give extra information about that. And where you find tarot, if you're not a number plus a suit kind of reader, where you really find the strongest tarot is in the majors, because that's the addition that was added as a trick in a trick taking game, right? The trumps would trump the minor cards in the playing card deck, and so it has extra influence and extra power, right? Because it's the bigger picture. It's our overarching our life path, either in this lifetime or even across lifetimes. It's that big turning of the wheel that's coming in and saying, whoa, pause, there's some big energy that is afoot here. But I think if you kind of start to follow those and key into those style of readings, it's going to make a lot of sense. Can you, like if you're a Rider-Waite-Smith reader, can you just kind of read with these? Yes, I think you can. Obviously, you can do anything you want. It's going to be slightly more, some of the cards might be slightly more challenging, um, but you can, you can add anything that you want onto it. And then you might be doing something like saying, okay, I've got all these playing cards and I've got the when do I look at it as playing cards? When do I look at it as a tarot? Well, then you might use reversals, right? You might shuffle up, do your reversals. This was somebody else's suggestion, but then you might, go ahead and do your reversals. And if it's the tarot, you're going to read it like your Six of Wands. And if it's Six of Spades, you're going to read it more like your spades. Or yeah, you're going to read the tarot, or you're going to read the playing card, depending on which one is in the upper left hand corner. So you could do something like that if you're really wanting to separate tarot out and away from the playing cards, right? But that's going to be, you're just kind of making that blend for yourself and seeing what works. Some of the joy is just in, getting cards on the table and playing with something and coming to get to know and understand how the deck is going to best serve you. And if that looks completely different than what I just showed you on how I read it, then more power to you, right? It's your tool to use as you will. If the biggest key, right, is that we play with it, and we get to know it, and that we get the messages that we need. However we get those messages doesn't really matter in the long run. It's that if you're getting good, clean, consistent messages, then great. It's a tool that you can utilize in any way that you want, and to have a little bit of fun as well. So I hope this helps. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I wish you a wonderful rest of your day.